Hello, this is the Watchdog, and welcome back to Fun with Watches. If watches weren't fun, you'd only need one. Today we're going to review the Steeldive ST1970 Captain Willard. Let's start with the wrist check. I'm wearing a Smil 8423, and Grogu's wearing my Liege 10045. I told Grogu that the movie Apocalypse Now starts out with the end by the doors. He said, does it finish with the beginning by the windows? Alright, let's take a look at the watch. It comes in this nice plastic case. We had one of those plastic cases the last watch I reviewed, which was a Thorn. These cases are used by 4 or 5 different brands among AliExpress watches, and they're really nice cases. I really like them. They're just well built, and they have this foam rubber inside, and I think they do a good job of protecting the watch. So let's put the case aside, because if you want to know what's in the case, watch my unboxing video. And here's the watch. Isn't that a nice looking watch? I really like it. I really like the Captain Willard style of watch. This is the third Captain Willard on my channel. The first was an Addy's Dive, which is nearly identical to the Steeldive, but that was several years ago, and I have many more subscribers since then. Plus, back then, both Steeldive and Addy's Dive used a boring press clasp, which would be possibly the only gripe and groan for the watch. Plus, I always regretted selling that watch, so I decided that the new clasp and the fact I was getting Steeldive instead of Addy's Dive was a perfect excuse to pick one up during the last big AliExpress sale, and I paid only $65 for it, which is a bargain considering how much watch you are getting. At 44 millimeters, this is a full-size watch, but since it follows the original Seiko design, the lug-to-lug is relatively short, 48 millimeters, and this watch can be worn by smaller wrists without overhang. Personally, I think a Willard looks better on a tropical or sailcloth strap, as it seems to fit the jungles of Vietnam theme better, but my rule of thumb is to always get the bracelet if it has fitted end links, as you can always get a strap cheap enough from the aftermarket. Besides this blue, you can get this watch in green or black. Black would be more in touch with a real Willard, as they were only offered in black during the war, and thus black is what Martin Sheen wore in the movie. But I'm a sucker for blue on blue dive watches, and I am planning on keeping this for my personal collection. I've probably seen the movie Apocalypse Now at least 20 times, so I will be happily quoting the movie for some serious eye rolls from Mrs. Watchdog. The watch is 41.5 millimeters if you measure at the bezel, but 43.6 millimeters if you measure at the case right here. And of course, it's got this little crown guard that makes the case look even bigger. It's 48 millimeters lug to lug, which is relatively short considering how big the case is. It's 13.6 millimeters thick, so it's fairly thick. Has a 20 millimeter lug width, which is kind of small for a watch this big. Usually something this big will have a 22. And it weighs 179 grams on the supply bracelet with 3 links removed. Yes, so it's a fairly heavy watch also, but I removed 3 links, so you should be able to wear it if you have a really big wrist. The bezel is a ceramic 120 click unidirectional. The clicks are very light and you can barely hear them, but there's a lot of resistance of the bezel when you turn it, which has nothing to do with the ratcheting. It's more like the gaskets are holding it back. But that's fine. I mean, that way it doesn't knock it out of place easily, which is always a pain when you go to set a watch or something, then you actually knock the bezel out of place. But yeah, you can barely hear the clicks. But there's no back play at all, and everything lines up. Then we have a sunburst dial. It has a nice sunburst effect, and I really like this color of blue. The Steeldive name and logo is printed up top. Then on the bottom it says automatic water 200 meters resist. Then we have applied Lume Indus, and Lume is some of the best Lume you're ever going to find on a watch, especially for a watch under $100. And then we have the hands. The hands are Lume stick hands. And then we have the stoplight second hand with the red stoplight, which is always a nice touch. It's always nice to have a little bit of red on your watch. It just helps it stand out. Then we have the date at the 3 with the border. And it's a nice looking date because it really matches the 9 o'clock indus, so it really doesn't ruin any of the symmetry, but gives you the functionality of a date. Then we have a signed screw down crown with some serious crown guards here. It makes unscrewing it a little bit difficult and awkward just because of the huge crown guard, but it's fine. It's not annoying. It's not like that Tandorio I had, which was a bronze one, which screwing in the crown was a real pain. But screwing in the crown is no big deal. It's a little awkward, but it catches quickly. And the thread action is really good. You don't feel a lot of thread resistance, and you don't feel like you're going to strip it or anything. And then we have a flat sapphire crystal. And as you can see, there's lots of reflection. There's no air coating, but still that's fine. And then we have the solid steel case. And this, of course, is a Captain Willard design. It's a lot like a turtle, except for it has this huge crown guard here. And then it's brushed on top, but we got polish on the side and brushed on the bottom. It's a nice looking case. And once again, the main advantage, it keeps the lug to lug fairly short, even though this is a really big watch. Then we have a signed screw down case back. We do not have a display case back, and this is an NH35 watch, and I just as soon not see an NH35. They're not the prettiest movement to look at, even though they're great movements as far as functionality. So it never hurts my feelings if a watch does not have a display case back. I mean, it doesn't bother me if it does. It's just, it's not a deal breaker, that's for sure. Then it says dive. It doesn't say divers, so it's not cheating. It's got to have an apostrophe S before it implies ISO 6425 certification. 200 meters, water resistant, all stainless steel, automatic, movement, NH35. So they're kind of committed to the NH35. That means they can't ever sneak a Miyota 8215 in there to save money, which is good, because Pagani Design did that to me once. They snuck in a Miyota 8215 in a watch once when there was that big NH35 shortage. And of course, the NH35 is the go-to workhorse movement for watches in this price range. It's a 24 joule 3 hertz movement that hand winds hacks and has a bidirectional rotor. And they're usually fairly accurate right off the shelf. So let's go ahead and put it on the Timegrapher, because I spent a lot of money on this Timegrapher. And so if it's an automatic watch, by God, I'm going to Timegraph it, even though your mileage may vary. Here it is on the Timegrapher. As you can see, this one's running a bit fast, 15, 16 seconds fast. Of course, with a hacking movement, it's always better to run fast rather than slow, because to set it, all you have to do is hack the movement and wait for time to catch up, which is a little bit simpler than setting the hands. And as you can see, we got 0.3 milliseconds beat error. That's why you see 2 little lines on the screen instead of 1 line. But it's not horrible. I mean, now it's doing 12, so I've seen a lot worse, and that's not bad considering. Of course, if you have the time and the patience and the skill, you could always take the case back off and try to regulate it. The bracelet has solid end links, and it's a 3-link bracelet, but the center links are fixed with the side links. But the center links are brushed, which is preferable to me than polished center links. I just like the brush look better on a bracelet, especially on a dive style watch. And then we have push pin adjusters, not screw pins. I'm perfectly happy with push pins. I never lose push pins, but sometimes I lose screw pins. And who wants to mess with Loctite if they don't have to? And then we have the clasp. This is my big excuse for getting a watch I practically reviewed already, is that it had the old-fashioned press clasp. Well, this is a new milled clasp. And yeah, the upper's still pressed, but it's a nice pressed upper. And it's got 6 holes of micro adjust, so you can get the perfect fit. And the perfect fit is necessary in this watch because it's a 180 gram watch, so it's heavy. So you want the perfect fit. And it's a sign clasp too. So we got Steeldive on the fold over, and then we got the logo on the clasp. So it's nice. I'm glad they did that. I think it really improves the watch. And it took the one, it wasn't really a flaw of the original watch, but it was just annoyance, and it fixed it. So it turned a watch that was almost perfect to just about perfect. Here's the watch on my 7.5 inch wrist. It looks nice. It wears nice. Yes, it's a big watch, but like I said, because of the shorter lug to lug, it doesn't wear as big as it probably would if it had more traditional lugs. And it has and there's that clasp. Looks really nice. And I removed 3 links to fit on my wrist, so you should be able to wear this if you have a really big wrist. So that's always nice too. You don't have to bother asking for extra links or stealing links from another watch. Here we are in the Lume room. Everyone knows that the SD1970 has awesome Lume. So instead of doing a normal Lume test, I decided to put it up against my best Lumed watch, the Tag Heuer Aqua Racer. This is kind of a David and Goliath battle, as we're talking about $80 watch versus a $3,000 watch. As we speed up the time, we see that the Steeldive is doing quite well and also has the bonus of a fully Lume bezel. Both watches have a home triangle on the bezel instead of a Lume pip, and they appear about even, although the Steeldive is completely filled in instead of hollow. But when it comes to the all-important minute hand, the Tag Heuer is clearly brighter and wider, so in this case David doesn't defeat Goliath, although it is a very good effort considering the price difference between the two watches. I think the fact that the Steeldive is using C3 for the hands instead of BGW9 is a factor. What I like about this watch? Well, the short lug to lug lets a big watch wear smaller. It has excellent Lume, almost as good as my $3,000 Tag Heuer. And I really like this new milled clasp with the 6 holes of micro adjust. What are my gripes and groans? None. I have nothing to complain about now that they fixed the clasp. But this is a big and heavy watch, and it might be too big for some people. So if I had a smaller wrist, I might complain about the size, but I don't. Do I recommend this watch? Yes, this is one of the best sub $100 NH35 powered watches I've ever reviewed, and the addition of the new clasp makes it just about perfect. It's not going to break my heart to sell it because I'm not selling it. This is going to be a permanent addition to my personal collection. If you want one of these, why wait for the next big AliExpress sale when they are such a value anyway? Well, thank you for watching my review of the Steeldive SD1970 Captain Willard, and I will be back with another review or unboxing. Be sure and like and subscribe to my channel. Bye.